Thank you, and thank you all for being in South Carolina tonight. Federal spending and debt are not only our greatest economic problems, they're our largest national security problem. Yet the President and the Congress continue to spend and borrow at record levels. Just adjusting the spending on existing federal programs will not solve the problem. What federal functions will you eliminate or return to the states in order to balance our budget?
Governor Romney, to you, sir.
Absolutely. Right now we're spending about 25% of the economy at the federal level, and that has to be brought down to a cap of 20%. I'll get that done within my first term if I'm lucky enough to get elected. How do you do that? One is eliminating programs. A lot of programs we like, but we simply can't afford. The first one we'll eliminate, however, we're happy to get rid of. That's Obamacare, and that'll save us $95 billion a year by my fourth year. Other programs we like, the Endowment for Humanities, the National Endowment for the Arts, public broadcasting. These are wonderful features that we have in the government, but we simply can't go out and borrow money from China to pay for them. They're not that essential. In terms of returning programs to the states, Medicaid, a program for the poor, should be returned to the states. Let the states manage it. And if we grow it at inflation plus 1%, we'll save $100 billion a year by returning that to the states. And finally, we have to make the federal government more productive. It is just way too overburdened with excessive personnel. I'll reduce the personnel by at least 10% and link the pay of federal employees with the pay in the private sector. We should not pay government workers more than the people of America who are paying for them.
Governor Romney, that's time. Governor Huntsman, please address Senator DeMint's question, if you would, sir.
Thank you, Senator DeMint. It's an honor to be with you in your state, as it is many other great leaders from South Carolina. I think it's absolutely appropriate that Admiral Mullen would say that our most significant national security threat is right here at home, and it's our debt. I completely buy into that. And if we're going to get this nation moving in the right direction, we need to recognize that debt, as 70% of our GDP and moving up, becomes a national security problem. You look at where Japan is, well over 100% debt to GDP. Greece, 170% to GDP. Italy, 120%. So you get a sense of where our tomorrow is if we don't tackle the debt and spending. My speech is a very short one on debt and spending. It's 3 words: the Ryan Plan. I think the Ryan Plan sets out a template that puts everything on the table. Medicaid, like Governor Romney, I'd send back to the states. Education, I want to move closer to the states. You move education closer to the decision makers, the school boards, the families, you're a whole lot better off. And I think there are some economic development functions as well, legitimately, that you can move closer to the state. But we've got to get our spending closer to 19% of our GDP, as opposed to this unsustainable 24, 25%.
Governor Huntsman, thank you very much.
Or we shipwreck the next generation.
Mr. Speaker, would you please address Senator DeMint's question?
Sure. I think actually, Senator, that there are 4 interlocking national security problems. Debt and the deficit's one, energy is a second one, manufacturing is a third one, and science and technology is a fourth. And you need to have solutions that fit all 4. I mean, the thing that most worries me about this super committee is that they fail to understand that innovation and growth have to be at the heart of what we're doing. Example, we should have a training requirement for all unemployment compensation so nobody gets money for doing nothing. Now, that saves money, but it simultaneously enhances the human capital of the United States and makes us more competitive in dealing with China. We should be opening up offshore so that folks are able to deal directly with, for example, $29 billion of natural gas here. In that process, you can take some of the royalties and modernize the Charleston port, which you need for jobs here. I'm just trying to walk you through a way of thinking. I helped balance the budget for 4 consecutive years. I'm not very concerned. If we're serious, what you want to do is fundamentally reform and overhaul the federal government, fundamentally, while at the same time accelerating economic growth to bring unemployment down to 4%. That combination gets you back to a balanced budget.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. Congresswoman Bachmann, please address Senator DeMint's question. What programs would you cut? How would you bring it down? The debt.
I want to thank you for asking that question, because that really is the #1 issue that's facing the country. We are in a terrible debt spiral, so much so that just in the month of October, we just added another $203 billion in debt. And when you consider the last time that Republicans controlled the budget, it was 2007, and the debt was $160 billion for the year. This was $203 billion just for the month of October. For every man, woman, and child in the United States, that means each one of us just took on another $650 in debt just for the month of October. That's the velocity that we're growing with debt. So what would I cut? I think really what I would want to do is be able to go back and take a look at Lyndon Baines Johnson's The Great Society. The Great Society has not worked, and it's put us into the modern welfare state. If you look at China, they don't have food stamps. If you look at China, they're in a very different situation. They save for their own retirement security. They don't have AFDC. They don't have the modern welfare state, and China's growing. And so what I would do is look at the programs that LBJ gave us at the Great Society, and they'd be gone.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Thank you very much. Mr. Kaine, U.S. forces are coming under attack daily now from the enemy crossing over the border from Pakistan. As President, as Commander-in-Chief, would you order U.S. forces into Pakistan to clear out those safe havens of the enemy?
That is a decision that I would make after consulting with the commanders on the ground, our intelligence sources, after having discussions with Pakistan, discussions with Afghanistan, and here's why. We pointed out earlier that it is unclear as to where we stand with Pakistan. It is unclear where we stand with Afghanistan. We have our young men and women dying over there. And for that president to say that they would side with Pakistan, that is a problem. This is why we have to tread lightly and get all of the information, because Pakistan is one of the 9 nations that has a nuclear weapon. So before I say we would do that, there's a lot of information that would need to be gathered.
Well, we've been at war in Afghanistan for 10 years, of course, and what is it about it that's unclear to you at this point? 30 seconds.
What's unclear is when the president approved the surge and then prematurely start pulling troops back, that wasn't a good strategy. Victory is not clearly defined. As president, I will make sure that the mission is clear and the definition of victory is clear, and that simply does not exist right now.
Governor Romney, would you send American troops across the border into Pakistan to clear out those safe havens? American men and women are coming under fire from those locations every single day.
The right way to deal with Pakistan is to recognize that Pakistan is not a country like other countries with a strong political center that you can go to and say, gee, can we come here? Will you take care of this problem? This is instead a nation which is close to being a failed state. I hope it doesn't reach that point, but it's a very fragile nation. It really has 4 centers of power: the ISI, which is their intelligence services, the military, separate group, you have the political structure, and of course the fundamentalists. And so we have to work with our friends in that country to get them to do some of the things we can't do ourselves. And bringing our troops into Pakistan and announcing at a stage like this that as president we would throw American troops into Pakistan could be highly incendiary in a setting like that. Right now, they're comfortable with our using drones to go after the people that are representing the greatest threat, and therefore I would continue to do that.
We have time, Governor, but are the Pakistanis comfortable with our using drones?
We have agreement with the people that we need to have agreement with to be able to use drones to strike at the people that represent a threat. And one of the things we have to do with our foreign aid commitments, the ongoing foreign aid commitments, I agree with Governor Perry. You start everything at 0. But one of the things we have to do is have understanding with the various power bases within the country that they're going to have to allow us, or they themselves, go after the Taliban and the Haqqani network to make sure they do not destabilize Afghanistan, particularly as we're pulling our troops out.
Senator Santorum, this week, National Journal and The Atlantic magazine reported that for various reasons, some related to paranoia in Pakistan about what the United States might do, they are moving operational nuclear weapons in that country unguarded in trucks. If you were Commander-in-Chief and intelligence came to you that one of those nuclear weapons was lost or possibly in the hands of terrorists, how would you respond?
Well, you'd have to respond with working with the Pakistani government and those who would feel as much threatened by that as we are. Mitt is absolutely right. There are various elements within the country that are very hard to deal with. You have a radical element. I would hope that we're talking about a situation where the military is is somehow in control of that, and that we would have an element of the military that would be a problem. I would work with the military, I'd work with ISI, and get to where we could secure that weapons. Obviously, we would not. You have to take some action, but it would depend on the circumstances. It's sort of a hypothetical without having the knowledge of how it happened. It would hard to be answered the question.
That article also made clear that Special Operations Forces are being trained for this very eventuality. Is that something you would consider as Commander-in-Chief, deploying Special Forces to isolate, find that nuclear weapon, and, if necessary, take it over?
I would be working with the intelligence community within Pakistan. Again, it's a compromised community. I understand there are relationships with ISI, with the Haqqani network. Again, depending on the circumstances that we're dealing with here, you would hope you would be able to work with the intelligence community and work, if necessary, in a support nature, whether it's with human intelligence or other types of surveillance, and potentially with the special forces on the ground. But again, this is clear. This is not one, you don't cowboy this one. You don't fly into with Pakistan and try to interdict a nuclear weapon. You've got to work with the people in power, in the government, to make sure that
Speaker Gingrich, 30 seconds, your thoughts on this scenario?
Well, look, this is a good example of the mess we've gotten ourselves into since the Church Committee so-called reforms of the 1970s. We don't have a reliable intelligence service. We don't have independent intelligence in places like Pakistan. We rely on our supposed friends for intelligence. They may or may not be our friends, and the amount of information we might or might not have might or might not be reliable. This is a very good example of scenarios that people ought to look at seriously and say, we had better overhaul everything from rules of engagement to how we run the intelligence community, because we are in a very dangerous world.
Governor Huntsman, as we sit here, there is a crisis in Europe over debt, particularly in Italy and in Greece, and there is the threat of contagion onto Wall Street and U.S. banks. How do you prevent the euro crisis from becoming a problem in the United States?
Let me just on Pakistan for 1 second, because it's pretty clear. There's one man in charge in Pakistan. I've negotiated with the Pakistanis before, both in government and business. They're a tough bunch. General Ghiani is in charge. He's head of the military, which is head of ISI. It isn't President Zardari, make no mistake about that. And I'd say you don't have a choice. Then I would pick up the phone and call Special Operations Command in Tampa and say, I've got a job for SEAL Team Number 6. Prepare to move. You don't have a choice. When you have a loose nuke, you have no choice, and we have to take charge. That's called leadership, and that's what I would do as president. With respect to Europe, we have two problems. One, Europe is our second largest export market. $240 billion we export to Europe every year, second only to Canada, $250 billion a year. As Europe goes down, as the metastasis spreads, they're going to buy less. And we're going to lose jobs unless we can find other markets as those exports begin to diminish. That's going to be problem number one, and we need to prepare for that. Number two, it's going to spread throughout the banking system to the point where it's going to hit us in the United States. And with banks that are too big to fail in this country, we're in deep trouble.
And that is time. Thank you very much. We just have time for a quick follow-up on that same question. Let me come to Governor Perry. How do you prevent the European crisis from becoming a problem on Wall Street?
Well, the French and the Germans have the economic forethought to deal with this. They have the economy. When you think about the euro and when it was established, it was done to be a competitor to the American dollar. They knew what they were doing. And now they find themselves with their overspending and the sovereign debt being built up.
Governor, I'm sorry, but it's the tyranny of the clock. We are all out of time. This is Scott Pelley with Major Garrett at the Republican debate. Thank you for joining us. Great to be with you.